This is Gascogne, the premium Tier 8 French battleship. Originally conceived as the fourth and final variant of the Richelieu class, her more conventional turret layout was designed to remove some of the shortcomings found in the previous two battleships of the class. Never constructed as a result of the German invasion of France, she is an interesting and historically rooted example of what could have been, and today it is time to put her to the test in World of Warships. I have chosen to equip the module's main armaments, damage control, aiming systems, rudder shift, and consumables expert, after testing with damage control and concealment expert. As usual, to give a picture of how this ship handles with an average commander, I have spent my 10 points on the skills preventative maintenance, gun feeder, grease the gears, adrenaline rush, basics of survivability, and, finally, fire prevention expert. The replays you are about to see do not feature this last skill, but this information is correct at the time of upload, and I do recommend taking it for increased survivability in the current meta. I purchased the French legendary commander Charles-Henri Honoré, available in the Armoury for 1500 gold, who has enhancements for the skills Grease the Gears and Adrenaline Rush. These are great additions for battleship players, and are particularly well suited for Gascogne. All French battleships from Tier 8 onwards have access to the engine boost consumable, which in this case raises Gascogne's speed by 8%, from an already notable 33 knots to almost 37. Which is a decent, if not outstanding, increase, and made all the more useful by its ability to push the ship through tight turns and provide quicker acceleration and deceleration. In addition, Gascogne's repair party has a fast cooldown of 40 seconds, ensuring that there is almost always a heal ready when you need it, and that incoming damage can be neutralized faster than many other ships. I have built into these strengths by equipping the Consumables Expert module, which adds an extra 3 seconds of heal and an extra 18 seconds of engine boost, but more importantly, reduces the time you have to wait for them to reload. These already fast cooldowns combine with the upgrade module to give Gascogne higher durability under heavy fire, and are especially useful in getting out of tight situations. Near identical to her sister ship Richelieu, Gascogne shares the same well-protected citadel, tough turrets, and vast expanses of 32mm plate. Her spaced armour scheme gives excellent protection when angled and against plunging fire, but at close ranges her belt becomes vulnerable to large shells. However, when angles come into play, Gascogne can bounce a surprising amount of incoming fire, and her rudder can often swing her around fast enough to dodge most, if not all, of any salvo aimed her way. Torpedo protection is a solid 35%, but her health pool is on the low side for Tier 8 at 63,200 hit points. With an internal armour belt, her sides and deck are made entirely of 32mm steel and are susceptible to high explosive spam, which is why I suggest taking the skill Fire Prevention Expert. Her relatively narrow citadel sits a fraction above the waterline and is protected by a steeply angled 50mm turtleback behind a 320mm belt that thins to 250mm at its base. The citadel ends are protected by 233mm, with an upper strip at the bow that is about 100mm thicker, and has a 40mm roof covered in turn by 15cm of casemate deck. The largest vulnerability are her machine spaces, which are behind the torpedo protection and only shielded by 30mm, but nevertheless it remains very difficult to knock out her engines. Like all her sister ships, the two French Tier 9s and the modified Tier 10 battleship Bourgogne, Gascogne utilises the same with 380mm 45 caliber rifles. All 5 battleships fire the same shells, but Gascogne has the second best dispersion out of them all at 299 meters. Her turrets can rotate 180 degrees in 36 seconds, but this can be reduced to 28 seconds with commander skills applied. This is something I recommend, as a fast traverse speed complements her turret layout and high maneuverability.
Someone's saying hello on the enemy team. Who's that? Will 10? I have no... People have so many different names. There's a Gascogne down here somewhere, so we're going to come down here. Send our planes after this Gascogne. Already turning out hard, that's not good. Shitty angle to drop a battleship. I should really have come around and try to hit him on his blind side. See, he's just able to turn and avoid everything.
These guns handle well and, what's more, have incredible range. With the spotter plane consumable active, Gascogne can throw her 8 shells out to a distance of 28.6 kilometers. A range uncommon at tier 10, let alone tier 8. In combination with this range, I've utilised the aiming systems module to further reduce this dispersion to 278 meters. Every advantage helps in a ship that can see tier 10 battles, and this range combined with her solid 36% fire chance allows you to offer something in return to any sniper that tries to get its teeth into you. Like her sisters, Gascogne only has 2 turrets, but her configuration is somewhat unique in that they are placed at opposite ends of the superstructure. This brings a slew of pros and cons, mostly disadvantages, that somehow manage to be advantages over her same tier counterpart. With no blind spot and a better reload speed, she can shoot where Richelieu physically can't, but even if one turret is disabled, all her firepower in that direction is nullified. On the other hand, she always has 4 guns on one target at any given moment, and it is for this reason that I consider the skill Preventative Maintenance and the main Armaments 1 module as essentials. Her 8 barrels launch fast shells that have good ballistics and retain high penetration over distance, but suffer from bad ricochet angles and occasionally wonky dispersion. Her high explosive shells are excellent at setting fires and have very comfortable lead times, but lack outright alpha damage. However, 9 times out of 10, they make a better choice than shooting AP. This is the significant drawback of high velocity shells. They simply cut clean through most of what lands in their way. I've lost count of the times I've slapped a broadside cruiser only to collect a fraction of the damage I expected. Their extreme vertical dispersion, coupled with ricochet angles starting at 45 degrees, make a difficult target of anything other than a flat broadside, and their inability to overmatch anything thicker than 26mm plate means that these shells will simply bounce off anything that shows the slightest bit of angle. On the odd occasion though, these guns will pull off a salvo that makes everything worthwhile. Given that you're aiming in the correct place, it's more a case of what can't I citadel, with their largest drawbacks being their tendency to cut through light armour like a hot knife through butter. They perform similarly to the Italian 15-inch gun, with all of its advantages and drawbacks, and there is a trick you can use for targeting the lightest of cruisers. Aiming right at the waterline, instead of just above it, can result in the water slowing the shells down enough to deliver the paddling they're meant to. Gascogne's secondaries are a pleasant surprise, and something that has been improved by the commander skill rework. Boasting a better layout than the Richelieu's, most of their strength resides in the 152mm triple mounts, with the 100mm mounts better suited for starting fires. With a 20% and 60% fire chance respectively, they have a good reload speed and are excellent at harassing ships that come within 8 km of you. In terms of commander skills, they're almost worth building into if you can spare the points, which I may experiment with in the future. As the Richelieu class were historically designed with aircraft facilities, likewise Gascogne can equip either a spotting aircraft or a group of fighters. Through my gameplay, I've found that the spotter plane is more useful for landing surprise shots on that sniping battleship lurking in the back row, or that aircraft carrier camping in the corner of the map. It comes in most useful during the opening or closing minutes of a game, for setting those initial fires or farming that last bit of damage. Deploying the plane is only useful when shooting HE, as Gascogne's dispersion at that range is only sufficient to land 1 or 2 shells on your target, but it only takes a few of those to get your target burning. Without aerial assistance, the range on the main battery is more than enough to satisfy those players who want to equip the fighters and make the CV pay in blood for every strike. That last aspect is something her AA cannot do, as it is limited by both range and damage output. You won't be earning any AA Defense Expert medals here, instead relying more on your manoeuvrability and speed to confound the aerial attackers. There is one small mitigation, in that Gascogne's space deck armour is effective at shattering, bouncing or absorbing bombs and rockets, preventing those massively damaging citadel hits. Gascogne's base concealment ratings are 16.2 km from the surface and 11 km from the air, which falls on the good side of average for her tier. However, firing all her guns whilst her spotter plane is in use has the downside of revealing her position to anything within a 28.6 km radius. She is stealthier than the Richelieu, but not by much. It is a good thing that Gascogne's HE shells perform so well, because that is the ammunition you'll be firing most of the time. Her small gun caliber is the unfortunate cherry on top of this unfavourable cake, coupled with a rear turret that can only be unmasked by a heavy hand on the helm if you're unwilling to trade survivability for steering gears. With a thin 32mm skin, she is susceptible to vast amounts of HE and fire damage, and can melt extremely quickly under concentrated fire from multiple enemies. Having a turret knocked out in a critical situation can be the difference between victory and death, and moreover takes away half her firepower at the worst time. Her range is countered by shells that like to go where you didn't aim. Her health pool is small, and her AA isn't worth talking about. Don't buy this ship if you find the USS Vermont attractive, you enjoy consistent damage and predictable behaviour, and don't react well to changing situations. You build for survivability and prefer tanking damage to avoiding it. Do buy this ship if you're a tier 10 supercruiser disguised as a tier 8 battleship. You enjoy flanking and teasing the enemy with your position, running backwards and forwards whilst exploiting the fact they always underestimate your speed. You can lure enemies closer with the promise of high explosive, then quickly switch to AP to delete their health when they least expect it. Once you get used to her turret placement and high shell velocity, Gascogne handles like a dream. She has the best speed, an excellent rate of turn, near trollish armour, and a main battery that can hold its own even at tier 10. Her secondaries stack damage brilliantly. Her torpedo protection is effective, and her repair party is always ready. But the final piece of the puzzle is her sheer versatility. With speed, range, a fast rudder, fast guns, and an armour scheme that excels at bouncing armour-piercing shells, Gascogne dictates the rules of the engagement at a whim. Her concealment is low enough to hide from enemy battleships between salvos, yet her long-lasting engine boost and quickly shifting rudder do much for her ability to dodge torpedoes, outrun enemy cruisers, and even destroyers. Fractionally more accurate than her tech tree counterpart, Gascogne has more range and the ability to launch aircraft, but pays for it with worse AA and reduced forward firepower. To compensate for her turret layout, her secondaries have a more effective distribution, her rudder is quicker to shift, and her heel reloads in half the time. As a high tier premium, she comes with camouflage which boosts her already high credit modifier, as well as doubling earned XP and reducing service costs. On paper, Gascogne is seen as the worst for the Richelieu. She is different, an experiment that history never got the chance to play with, and her playstyle is not for everyone. She doesn't quite know where she sits on the line between battleship and cruiser, and can sometimes come off as unpredictable and unforgiving. At her tier, she is unique, for reasons that are both positive and negative. There is no gimmick that she relies upon to make things playable, and neither does she need one. Whilst her same tier sister is viewed as the safer option, and her tier 9 pseudo-sister Jean Bar requires only a reload booster to spice up what are essentially the same guns, Gascogne is the odd one out. Is she a taste of the tier 10 battleship République? In many ways, the answer is yes, and this is very much a good thing. I have really enjoyed my 66 or so battles in Gascogne, having used her as both commander trainer and credit farmer, and hope that sharing my experiences will prove useful to you. For until next time, through weather foul and fair, happy hunting on the high seas.